everyone stand. Just give me a moment and we will jump right in. Just let me get the kids settled. Okay, evening, everyone. Sorry about the delay. I am currently being Mr. Mom. My wife is away for work, traveling. So I appreciate everyone's patience. I will be going in, on and off camera as needed. So thank you. Welcome. It is February 28th. We are convening our Second Avenue Subway Task Force. It is approximately 6:33 p.m. My name is Xavier Santiago. I'm the chair of Community Board 11 and chairing this task force. The meeting is officially called to order. Tonight, we are joined by District Manager Angel Muscane. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. 1, no one may speak until granted the floor. 2, CB11 members, if you have a question about board business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. If you click the participants icon, the participants panel should appear and you should find the raise hand function there. If you still have technical difficulty, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty. Members should not engage in a back and forth discussion. The chair will recognize the next person to speak. 3, the chat function should not be used for CB11 business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information like an email address or other information that's pertinent to the meeting. For when a member is given the floor to speak, I'll identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you may speak. 5, please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. Members of the, okay, great. With that, we will now take attendance by roll call. Angel?
Sure. Task force members, when I call your name, please answer. Present. Jose Altamirano. Jessica Elliott. David Giordano. Marissa Mack.
I'm here, sorry, David.
Got you, Dave. Thank you. Giselle Malave. Jennifer Meyer.
Present.
Nelsa Arama. Beverly Pavone.
Present.
Claudia Perez.
Present.
Xavier Santiago.
Present.
And Candy Vasquez. You have quorum.
Great. Thank you very much, Angel. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and was posted online. If there is no objection, will you adopt the agenda as stated? Board members, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Okay. Seeing no hands raised, the agenda is adopted. The minutes from last full board, Second Avenue Subway Task Force, which were covered at full board, were distributed to all of our board members ahead of the time by the board office. If there are no objections, we will adopt the minutes from that meeting. Board members, if you object to adopting the minutes, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the minutes from last Second Avenue Subway Task Force are adopted. Okay, next into our agenda, we have update from the MTA Community Affairs team. I believe Joe O'Donnell and his team are supposed to be here with us to give us an update. Do you see them logged in, Angel? I'm trying to check.
Yes, Joe is on.
Great. Joe, you have the floor. If you wish to share your screen, Angel will be able to assist you with that. Welcome.
Great, thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity as always to come and speak with the community board as well as this Second Avenue Subway Task Force. As we've talked about over the course of the project getting to where we are today, the task force was a vital tool and an instrument for phase 1, and definitely encouraging to see that we've got it up and going before we even have a shovel in the ground here for phase 2. So excited about that and about all of your enthusiasm Xavier and I spoke. One of the reasons why we weren't necessarily planning to come and give an update this month because of the fact that we don't have any full-on construction going yet. So there isn't a ton in the way of updates, but we did want to come to speak about the second and final eminent domain procedure law proceeding that will be taking place on March 15th. There is a public hearing for the remaining parcels of the that are needed for the advancement of the Second Avenue subway for elements of the stations, for construction, some properties that were deemed so close to construction that it was prudent to purchase those properties rather than potentially impact them so severely during the course of construction that we needed to make a course correction somewhere down the road. Again, all lessons learned from phase one on how to be able to deliver this project better and with the least amount of impacts to the surrounding community as possible. So with that said, that second tranche, if you will, of properties is going to be put out. Letters went to all of the impacted property owners, advising them of the public hearing and of the interest to advance acquisition of those parcels. The vast majority of them, in fact, are permanent and temporary easements, which will not require the complete or total purchase of a respective parcel, or a displacement of any individuals, both commercial or residential. It is strictly a rights agreement for us to either build adjacent to or beneath a respective parcel. So the good news is the vast majority of these acquisitions between the first property procedure law hearing and this hearing are temporary and permanent easements, and not total full fee acquisitions, which would ultimately result in purchasing of the property, the MTA becoming the landlord until such a time that we need that property to construct the project. And then we would, over the course of that period, set about relocating the individuals and or businesses in those parcels into a like-sized and rent accommodations, preferably in the same area. So that's where we are today.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there any questions from our board members? We
Sorry,
do.
I can't find my hand thing.
Okay, hi Beverly. Yeah, Beverly, you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Joe, for the presentation. I have some questions regarding the eminent domain, for a particular property site. The block and lot is 1773, lot 20 and 27. That's between 125th and 124th Street, Lexington to 3rd Avenue. So my question is, in regards to lot 20, did the MTA buy that lot out or right? Because I'm looking at a document from 2021 and it states that on those lots, you would have to have permanent full taking and subsurface easements. Right.
Beverly, could you just state the address again? I heard one between 123 and 124. I thought I didn't hear the address.
Okay, the addresses are make sure I'm gonna get it right. 142-168 East 125th Street. 2051, 26, also 2051 to 2061 Lexington Avenue. That's lot 20. And you have that in the 2021 paperwork of, you have in that to be of permanent full taking. Then you have a part of the lot for lot 27, which is the address 149-167 East 124th Street. Yeah, those are the same addresses. And for that address, you have a permanent full taking, and you also have a permanent partial taking and permanent subsurface easement. Are those built for 20? Is that definitely a done deal that you did purchase that property?
So the only parcels, so we did have in 2021, we had the first tranche, the first bundle of property acquisitions that we were advancing. We have put out offers so essentially the way it works is the eminent domain process is a tool that not only protects the MTA's interest, but it protects the property owner's interest. It essentially starts the clock and requires both parties to bargain in good faith to come to a resolution on the acquisition within a 24-month period. Otherwise, they need to go back to the drawing board and start all over again. So there was parcels that were advanced in 2021 as part of our first eminent domain procedure law process. And of those parcels that went forward, we made offers to 4 owners for 8 parcels because one owner owned 5 parcels. So we've only gotten to actual offers so far to 4 owners, 5 owners, 8 parcels, and I'll have to just double check those numbers. But I believe I sent to Community Board 11 a notification when we were sending out those notices, of the offer, the tender of offer to those property owners, but I can resend that if they don't have it.
Okay.
That said, we don't have final offers with anybody yet other than the city for the HBD parcels on 125th Street, for the Durst parcel on 125th Street, and for the Extel parcel on Lexington Avenue. Those are the only ones that we have final offers on right now.
So with them being as final offers, they have to accept it first. They haven't gotten to that point of them accepting it.
Those entities have accepted the offers, and they now sit with the FTA to ultimate, because this is a federally funded project and a good portion of the money is federally funded. They have to ultimately approve. Not only do they have to sign off on our appraisal to ensure that it's a fair and accurate appraisal, but they have to also sign off on the deal, the final deal as well. So that's where it stands now. The entities themselves have agreed to the terms. It's now sitting with the FTA.
Okay. I hope that answers your question, Beverly.
Yes, thank you.
No, thank you. And everyone, just when you're done asking your question or comment, please don't forget to mute. Okay, Angel.
Thanks. Joe, thank you for the summary. Could you provide a little bit more of an explanation as to what the experience of the properties identified for the temporary easement is going to be? I know we got an inquiry today from the operator of a building on 125th Street between Lex and Park. And they're concerned because their property was listed for a temporary easement. So I was wondering if you could just provide a little bit more clarity as to what their experience will be during the project.
Yeah, I've gotten 2 phone calls as well. I'm sure maybe we should touch base offline and see if it's the same inquiry. But so it varies. Some of these easements, temporary and permanent, are for access. A property owner, in theory, owns the rights to the property to the center of the earth and to the sky. When they own a block and lot, that goes on, vertically to the sky and then down to the center of the earth. So there are instances where we may need to, for instance, tunnel or bore or excavate 50 or 60 feet below, 100 feet below ground, and not actually ultimately touch that parcel or property. But because they own the rights to it, we need to work out an arrangement with them in order to do that, because it could impact their ability to do further development or a larger scale development down the road if our structure is in the way. Similarly speaking, if it is a street level easement, it could be temporary in nature for the construction of the project. We may know that we're going to have equipment or apparatuses in such close proximity that we are going to cross into what would be technically their property line. So we would need to work out agreements in order to execute that. So it's going to be on a case by case scenario, and happy to discuss offline any one individual or block and lots concerns, Angel.
Thank you, Joe. That's very helpful. Like there's quite a few properties listed there, and the question about the temporary easement, I'm sure. Well, the properties listed as possible temporary easements, I'm sure folks are a bit concerned. So thank you for that clarification, and we'll certainly continue to speak.
Sure.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. I'm going to go to Carrie King real quick. She was had her hand raised for a while, and then we'll circle back to you, Beverly, for your follow-up.
Guys, that was actually my 5-year-old, so I apologize. I'm going to lower my hand. It's good to see you guys. Thank you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for being with us. Beverly, you had a follow-up question?
Yes, in regards to the ones that you use for temporarily, my question is, are there any incentives that you're giving to the property owners that you are using their property temporarily, or if they're being used for access to the subway station in the future? Is there any incentives or things that's happening with that?
Well, there's financial compensation. They would be paid, for the use of their space.
Okay. If they have a building on it, they're not getting any air rights or more space by having a subway station entrance or exits for that property. Is there anything for that?
So typically the way it works, Beverly, is when we evaluate a parcel, it's not for the present, what's there today. When we evaluate a parcel, it's for its best and optimal use. So it actually gets evaluated under the best case scenario, not necessarily what's there today. Maybe, the property owner hasn't used it to its full potential or developed it to its full potential. But when we evaluate or appraise it, we have to appraise it on what its full potential could be and come to a determination of just compensation for what that full potential is. So.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you, Beverly. And let me see, are there any other questions? Okay, so with that, I appreciate you being here, Joe. And I think you already sent around the public comment period. And we will recommend if Angela, do we have that readily at our fingertips by chance, or do you, Joe? So we just put it on the screen.
Yeah, I do actually have it. I can put it up. It's a hybrid meeting. It's going to be virtual and in person. You can either join us at the Tito Puente Educational Complex in their auditorium, and come listen in or make public comment, or you could log in virtually if you're not available, or if it's easier to do remotely. Feel free to join us. And again, you don't have, just by joining, you don't necessarily have to make a comment, but you're more than welcome to. And specifically, if you're a property owner or you're property owners, please ask them to come out and so they can get the latest and greatest information directly from the source.
Okay, wonderful. Why don't you throw that up on the screen for us real quick? You should be able to share.
Hang on. Can everybody see that?
You need to scroll down a little bit.
So about in the center of the screen is the relevant details. And then towards the bottom of the screen is the list of properties that would be discussed. And as you can see, the vast majority of them are temporary and permanent easements, which again are agreements, not necessarily acquisition of parcels to the detriment of the property owner. And in fact, some of the deals that I've already heard about, which are moving forward, they're pretty good deals as it is. So even a detriment is a poor choice of words on my part.
Okay, Great, wonderful. Hold on a second. I have a hand raised. Real quick, Raul Soto, you may unmute and ask your question.
Hi, thank you. Just really quick, Joe. We're Econ Chart Program in Econ Scholars Academy, so we have the property at 2052nd Avenue, and I know that members of your team have spoken to myself and our managing director of operations. My question is related to like the temporary easement. What does that agreement look like? We haven't received a notice yet. I'm sure that they're going out or we're about to receive what the notice is, but will we have essentially all the agreements related to the temporary easement kind of written down and signed by folks or before things go into place?
Yeah, so what happens is for any of the full fee acquisitions, it's somewhat self-explanatory when, you know, if we're going to buy a parcel outright. But if it is a temporary or permanent easement, the paperwork that the owner will receive relative to this action will have maps and illustrations showing the parcel, the dimensions, what the intended use is for that parcel and its need. So it'll explain, you know, it may be worthy of a conversation, and if you get it and don't understand it, because it is engineering drawings. So if you don't have an architect or engineer or somebody who can necessarily decipher it for you, if there are any problems, you know, feel free to reach out to me, and I will, you know, grab someone from the project team and help walk anybody through to ask questions.
Awesome. That'd be fantastic. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions before we conclude this portion of the meeting? Don't forget to lower your hands after you've asked your question. Beverly,
Last question in regarding to the public hearing. What's the date and time of that? Or is that
It's
already in the chat?
March 15th at 6 p.m.
Thank you.
No worries.
wonderful. Thank you, Beverly. Did you have a hand in that selection, the Ides of March?
No, I didn't. I mean, I did, but ultimately it was based on the availability of the school.
Right, right. All right, little tongue in cheek and irony there. Okay, very good. I don't see any other questions. I appreciate that and helping simplify this process and disclosing everything. So thank you very much, and we'll keep you posted. And again, as more information develops, please, you're welcome here to update us. Okay, Joe?
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'll stop sharing. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, we can put our agenda back up. Thank you, Angel. Okay, with that, we're going to move on the agenda, which is the discussion on the format and workflow of the task force in anticipation of the project. And real quick, just to Angel, just to let you know that one of the dial-ins ending in 682, that's Nilsa Rama. I just got a text from her, and we have a few other members who've joined us. So when we first had this, when we had our meeting last month, we talked about the working groups from the station stops 106, 116th, and 125th. And we have some new members that have joined. Obviously, Candy's come on, Vivas Vasquez, and we had Claudia Perez. And Claudia and I had a brief conversation before we dive into the format. And I want to hear a very robust discussion, sharing of thoughts, and get feedback. But Claudia had exchanged something with me about their experience during the end of phase one and what they kind of went through. She's further south in the district. So Claudia, do you feel comfortable speaking at this time, or you're muted, just by the way?
Really quickly, Washington Houses was the only NYCHA development affected by the Second Avenue station. One of the major things we do know is that when they're building, they are there for practically a decade. The crosswalk area, entrances and exits to the buildings located on Second Avenue, they were rearranged. Like you would come out one day and the path of basically the roadway that they built, if they were working on a different part, it was no notification. At one point in time, they went so deep, they hit one of the gas lines. It took about 3 months for that particular building to get the gas back up and running. Another thing is, and it's still a major problem that we're dealing with right now, are the rodents. I mean, I hate to like say it like that, but I'm going to, because at the end of the day, that we're still dealing with that issue here. I mean, and there's no immediate relief. The minute it slows down, it back up again. So that I really do advise there be of action just for the rodents. Also, mailboxes were moved, bus moved during these times. On 101st and Second Avenue, that, I mean, no, it starts on 99th Street, between 199th Street. Then it moved over to 99th Street, between 99th and 98th Street. Then it was moved over to 100th Street, and no notification was given. Those are just some of the things that we experienced during this phase of them building out the Second Avenue station. Thank you. I yield the floor back.
Thank you, Claudia. I appreciate that. I think that there were a lot of lessons learned, and we've had in the previous meeting talked about some of the ways the MTA had tried to get in front, but I think that's very helpful and a good example of how the working groups should be processing and communicating the challenges that we'll all be experiencing, and helping build better partnership with the MTA as they endeavor on completing phase 2. So with that, we talked about the 106th Street stop. Obviously, you would sit on that. We've had our little breakout of our different groups, and that would be all of our electeds that happen to be in that particular section. Case in point, for example, the 125th Street station stop would include Cordell Clares because of the way it extends out and terminates there on the line. And so, it would also be shared by the 2 council members in that section. The 116th Street stop would obviously have Serrano and Gibbs and Ayala, and of course Espiat covering the entire district. So these are the different components went from the elected side. 106, if you've had a chance to go into our list, we had talked about including Union Settlement, obviously Washington Houses, because that's all close to 106th Street stop, and a few others. And we've been adding to that list. So, but I'd like to hear some feedback from our committee members on what their thoughts and how they would like to see the workflow going away to be able to meet with our CBOs, our stakeholders, and then bring that back to this body. So with that, I open the floor for comments, questions, so on. And please don't be shy. Jessica, do you have thoughts on it? Or hold on, Beverly. Bev, you had a question?
You said not to be shy, which I'm not, but I just want to get the get the questions probably going. In regards to the task force group member list, there's going to be something posted as to which group has who in it, so we can have we know who to contact if the groups need to talk to each other. And that would that have all the elected officials, like you said, the CBOs and community board members?
That sit on the list, yes, and that should be in our sandbox, our little Google Drive that you should have access to initially, and then once we have all the members, other CBOs will have a build out one that they can access to. So,
okay, thank you.
So let's go, Jessica Elliott.
Hey, everyone. The only thought I have is just regarding the size of the working groups with the task force for this stations. How can we keep things a little bit tighter at the beginning until we really fully understand what the process is and who's really necessary for those conversations, so that we're not sort of packing ourselves into the gills with 30 people on one group, and that may not be the right time. So just thinking how we might grow over time, and start out a little bit smaller and more refined in the beginning.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. That's a very helpful comment. Appreciate that. So talking about keeping it a more tight-knit group to start, and then for the working groups, and then expand as we get closer. All right, that's helpful. Louis Bailey, and then I will go to that question in the chat in just a moment. So Louis.
Yes, good evening, Chair. Thank you so much. My name is Bailey, Manager of Membership and Organizing at WEAC. I just want to know, have they reached out to the other complex that's located on 106th and 2nd Avenue? That complex that takes like 3 blocks there. Are they included in outreach? Because I think that's a very significant portion. It goes over to 1st Avenue as well. So that complex, I don't know the name of it, but it's there right there, 106th and 2nd.
I believe there had been Angel, that's which development is that? That's sorry.
That's he's referring to Franklin Plaza.
Franklin
And
Plaza.
yes, there's been outreach from the MTA since the first phase on this project, and I'm going into the second.
Okay, thank you so much.
Good thing, Lou.
Yep, and they would be one we'd want to loop in. And in fact, at the last meeting, Joe O'Donnell had said, because I believe they have a new TA, and Joe, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but a new TA president that they needed to connect with and give some additional updates. So
Correct, yep.
so so with that, we are there any other questions or thoughts on it? I'm gonna go down the line and call out some of our board members, because I'd really like your feedback on that. Obviously, each particular station stop, one of the recommendations, for example, was Sisters of the Assumption toward the 116th Street stop, and maybe looping them in. But I think the question of this committee is how large or small, Jessica said, keeping it a tighter knit group. So Marissa, what are your thoughts?
Hi, Xavier. I'm sorry, I'm on this call and I'm also on another call right now, but I did hear your question. I think I was kind of looking to see what the guidance would be, and then kind of weighing it on the guidance as opposed to, I guess, kind of like coming up with, like what we should do. I do agree with like keeping it small until we kind of have a direction and some sort of like framework for like exactly what we're doing, and then opening it up. Because if you have, a large group kind of weighing in, things can kind of, be all over the place. So, I mean, my recommendation would be to kind of figure out a direction with a smaller group. And then once the direction is made, then kind of say, look, okay, let's tap certain people with actual tasks and or bullet points of things to do, and then kind of move forward from there. So, again, recommendation would just be kind of keeping it small, creating what are the actual actions that we want people to do before pulling them in, because what's going to happen is people are going to come in and say, all right, what are we doing? Like what's going on here? But start small, have bullet points, assign task, and then kind of go from there. But I do also just want to note, I am sitting in, Jessica Meyer is actually our representative for our committee. Happy to help, frame this and what it's going to look like, but also want to delegate and get other people on our committee involved. So she's leading it for us, but that's my personal opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Marissa. Okay, are there any other members who have comments on this? Yes, Beverly Pavone.
Yes, Chair. Is it possible that we think about having, when Marissa was speaking about bullet points, a list of questions that's like basic, that it would affect all the stops that it would have. So we would have a set of questions or answers, or maybe a survey of what needs to be asked, and make sure that we're following through with those sets of questions or statements as we go forward for these stations, and we're working with the public.
So when it comes to, again, this is what we're discussing, the format and the workflow. I'm sorry, listen, one of the dogs is in the background, is talking about how the areas we'd want to cover, and each particular station stop is going to have its own challenges. Please excuse me for a moment. Sorry about that. So each station stop has its own challenges, and I think when it comes to format is that when we would break out into these working groups, those smaller working groups with the certain CBOs and stakeholders would be able to confer and determine the particular challenges that face that station stop. And that's why I started this off with Claudia talking about what they experienced toward the tail end of phase one and what they noticed. So you heard a couple of items that were listed is that they had issues with notifications being posted. They had damage that happened unintentionally, but it's still affected, and they're feeling that it affects this long after. So that was a series of components that for all of us to think about how we would engage with those small groups of the CBOs who would be included, and to have that initial breakout conversation and determine what particular concerns and questions around that area. So with our representatives of each working group, you should be familiarizing yourself with the surrounding area where the station stops would be based on the presentation that was given previously by Joe O'Donnell. Okay, Jessica.
Thank you, Chair. The only other question coming out of the insight that we heard about the first phase, the concerns about the rats, the impact on NYCHA housing. I wonder if there's a little bit of legwork and sort of frameworking we need to do in regards to, interagency collaboration, just to get our expectations ahead of, the construction schedule and make sure we're all on the same page about these kinds of things. That rats, as you know, from our committee, are, a continual problem that does not seem to get addressed in the statement of district needs and budget process. So something that could potentially exacerbate that problem is definitely a concern, and we should talk to DSNY, for example, about that as soon as possible. And maybe that's something that happens at like more of a community board scale, overall task force level, or maybe we can break it down more specifically to the specific working groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. And I think that's very helpful too, and how we would work together. And so I appreciate that feedback. I've seen the questions in the Q&A. To answer your question, and that this was answered in the previous meeting, that if they had been fully funded already, Joe O'Donnell explained that they would still be at least a year out, even if they had full funding today. And Joe, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in quoting you on that. The second thing, what is the purpose of, go on, Joe?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, we do have funding from the 2014 to 2019 and the current capital plan in hand, but we do not have our fully funded grant agreement from the FTA. So we've been reluctant to get going in earnest on the project so as to not find ourselves in a position like they did in the 1970s and not have that other shoe drop and, have made a mess of the area and not be able to finish what we started. And then, so once we do have confidence that the fully funded grant agreement is imminent, we don't necessarily have to have it in hand, but know that it's imminent. It would be, we could get going right now, probably by the end of this year. And the thought process is we will get going by the end of this year on that early utility work, which will pave the way for the heavy construction and the actual start of station work. But that's a good year off.
Thank you very much for explaining in detail again. And for this next question, before I go to you, David, is the purpose of the breakout groups and working groups was to afford those CBOs who were participating a little bit more input and determining what affects those particular areas. Each area has different concerns. And as we opined earlier with Claudia and what they experienced, is to be aware of what's happening in that surrounding area. Franklin Plaza being another, how is it going to impact that with the acquisition of the lots, and also to what the construction process will be like for that particular component. Then 116th is a different challenge, and then finally 125th. So it all plays a part. So that's why the breakout of the committee, so they can actually dive deep into go into the weeds, as it were. David.
Yeah, just quickly, Xavier, as we've been mentioning, the CBOs, are we including the DOE, as they have many schools that surround these different areas as well, and how that will impact the schools? So maybe, reach out to Dr. Christie and see if there's representation from DOE, as we have 23 schools spread out through East Harlem. This will impact them as well.
Thank you for the feedback on that, David. Beverly, question.
Yes, my question is there a certain radius that we have to, will we be looking at from the point of the train station outward? How many blocks are we thinking to include people and especially when on the CBOs and other businesses, is there, or do we just deal with the ones that's very close, like a block or two within the station itself?
So thank you. That's a really great question. And when we had Valerie Mason from CB8 and what the work they did during phase one, part of those questions were answered in that. And I think it depends on where they will be accessing and using the boring, where they're going to have the various support structures for ventilation. I think so that will determine where the radius you'll expand from. And that was also in our presentation that they gave last month. So we can dive into that. And it's a great question. So I think if you pull up the presentation that Joe gave, it's also on our website for people who are attending for the first time. I think next time we convene, we can go over and say, okay, from this 2-3 block radius, because this is where the 2 points are going to be there, or the 2 entrances. And so that's something we need to determine as a team. So thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. What I would like to see is everyone to look at the presentation that was given, also review the previous meeting with Valerie Mason, where she talked about those issues and challenges they faced, and then come back with thoughts. And feel free to email as well what you believe the kind of catchment area, how far we're going to spread out, and other concerns. In the group, we have shared in our Google Drive, you'll be able to see some of the different organizations that were recommended from the last meeting. If there are others for us to further discuss that you think we should consider, please add them in so we can discuss them further. Candy, you have your hand raised.
Yes, good evening. I missed the part where the breakout groups, you're going to give us a list of that, so this way I know where I'm at or what group I'm in?
So
Since I started joining last month.
yeah, so Candy, you and I can have a quick chat and we can go over that and see where you feel that you would be best suited and be able to deliver more strength. So
all right.
Yeah, so
Thanks.
thanks. Thank you. Okay, Angel, is there anything you would like to add?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. All
No,
right.
I'm kidding. I don't have anything. Yeah.
Okay, so homework, everyone. I want you to go back and think, look at the list again. And because we had an initial discussion, and say, who do we absolutely must have at each station stop? Jessica said we don't want it to get too unwieldy. Please take a look, see if those groups that are a must have to start off. Those that would probably have the greatest stakeholders or contributions are going to be there to stand the test of time, for example. Case in point, Franklin Plaza, Washington Houses. Those are 2 massive housing complexes that are going to be heavily impacted by it. So that's an obvious no-brainer. So having the TAs or a representative from each of those would be helpful. Think about 116th Street, 125th, those groups that would be able to best inform as we go through this process. So I'd really like all of you to come back with concrete ideas. Feel free to reach out to myself and Jess. Yes, Candy.
Yeah, include also Jefferson. So I remember growing up in front of Jefferson, that was horrendous for us at the Jefferson houses. So they, also get impacted by that too.
And right there is a great recommendation. Thank you, Candy. So again, this is helpful. Does anyone else have any questions?
I have a comment really quickly, if I
Yeah,
may.
please, Claudia, and then Beth.
Yeah, it's not only Jefferson, but it's also Wagner. also included in that, which is another development that will be affected. My suggestion, maybe this is something that we can put around the housing, because this does consist of it affecting housing, not in the NYCHA sense, but housing altogether within the community.
And well, and this is
Yeah.
part of what this committee is going to be tasked with, is assessing those that would be impacted. If I understand correctly, yes. Beverly,
I wanted to ask Joe, and regarding to the properties that they are looking to use, of people who's gonna be displaced, are they keeping a record of these people so in the future they can come back to this community? And my second question or comment is they gonna put anything in place for people with handicaps when they're doing these constructions? You know, I think that needs to be also addressed with the constructions of these sites.
So a couple things, I mean, presuming it's okay to answer. Yeah, Chair?
please.
So a couple things on that, Beverly, is yes. Not only will the stations, when we build them, all be ADA accessible with elevators and escalators, but during the course of the construction areas where we're working or impacting will all be ADA accessible. Part of the Good Neighbor initiative that we implemented as part of phase one, you know, we'll establish a team between our community outreach folks, the project team, and the contractor to walk the site on a regular basis to ensure things like cleanliness, navigability, not only for able-bodied persons, but for handicapped folks, to make sure that if there needs to be a curb cut out or a ramp, temporary ramps in place for folks to navigate around this work, that those are in place. So we will definitely have that. And as far as, you know, property relocation and welcoming folks back into this community, so for the property owners, if it's a negotiated settlement with a property owner, they're going to receive a sum of money for their parcel, and then they can do what they want with it. They can, you know, move away, buy somewhere else in the community, do what they like. If it's tenants inside that a building, they're not owners of the parcel, but they're going to be displaced because the ownership you know, has now been bought out. Like I said, essentially the MTA becomes the landlord for those properties, and then we'll work with those tenants to relocate them, preferably somewhere in the community in a like size and financial arrangement that they currently are in today. And we'll move them. We'll hire a relocation consultant to identify these new properties for them to move into, these new parcels to move into, as well as help them move. And then they can, you know, they can stay there, or they, you know, it depends on where they want to be when said time comes to potentially move back. One last thing, if I might, sorry too, if I could share my screen real quickly. We were supposed to meet with the NYCHA District Council earlier in the month, but it wound up having to be rescheduled. But just to give you all a sense of the, you know, we are working closely with NYCHA. And let me just see if I can make this larger for everybody. So this is the density of NYCHA parcels within the East Harlem community, and then specifically developments along the alignment. So you have Gaylord, Jefferson and Johnson, Corsi and Wagner, who are all, you know, we're all dealing with directly, but we'll be continuing to deal with throughout the project. And then you have the others peripherally.
Okay, thank you very much. Any additional questions?
This is John Van Cleef. I just had a quick question. I asked about the start of construction. Is there a worry? I mean, I don't want to be political here, but if the Biden administration's not going to be in office in 2024, 2025, is there a worry that this project could be canceled? I know you have the partial funding, but if you remember in the 70s when Gerald Ford came into office, everything stopped. I mean, he, obviously he was Republican like Nixon, but he had other issues on his mind. And I was wondering if, we could secure this federal money instead of, other issues, if we can settle or secure the balance of the federal money before, the unfortunate thing that may occur, that the Republicans take, the not only the House, perhaps the Senate, the White House. I think this could be possibly dead, a la Trump and the Hudson River Tunnel project. So I don't know if you guys have been talking about it, you've been thinking about it. I think it's a serious problem. That's why I asked. I've been I've been around for a long time. That's why I wanted to ask the question: when is this going to start? Is there a thought about that, or?
Joe, do you want to answer that, and then I'll respond?
Yeah, just briefly, I
like
guess, obviously it certainly weighs heavily on our minds. And one of the reasons we find ourselves where we do today, rather than much further along in the life cycle of this project, is because we did not have a friendly administration in the previous administration.
Sure.
We have a much more friendly administration in the Biden administration. And the hope is that, and we're targeting third quarter of this year to finalize that fully funded grant agreement. So we're hopeful, and that's what we're working towards. But better to have, money in hand than wait for some other eventuality down the road.
Correct. And by the way,
Yeah.
I appreciate this meeting. The guy, I came late, I'm sorry. The gentleman who's speaking and running the meeting, if I know I have Mr. Santiago's email or the community board, their email, but I'd like to participate going forward. And I'd like to have, a kind of discussion, if possible, just kind of doing an offline kind of chat, if you don't mind.
Sure, John. This is Xavier, and I sent you my email. So
Great. Okay.
So I appreciate everyone's patience with the family background noise tonight. Usually I'm able to be more sequestered.
No,
So,
please. You're a human being like everybody else.
Not according to my kids.
Yeah.
So send me an email. We'll have a chat.
Okay.
All of our task force meetings, our committee meetings, our full board, they're all public. To what degree at the committee level where all the work is done, that's usually the best opportunity for public to participate. Whereas like full board, that's the business session. It's really, we're focused on getting the work, except for the publicly registered speaker. So please send me an email. We'll chat. And the last bit is that there's an announcement coming out from the congressman. I'm waiting. I just got notice of it today. The last year, I think it was February, Espaillat, Representative Espaillat, Maloney, and several others of us convened for an announcement that he had allocated 25 billion that was earmarked that could not be touched, because in the past, when they had made an allocation from Congress, it would get raided by other divisions within the MTA to shore up other.
Correct.
And this is one that allocation was earmarked that it could not be touched. And so we're hoping that
Good.
how they continue to fill the buckets, very similar to the budget process, which we're going back and forth with right now, that you would get an allocation of funding in part when it comes to replacing boilers in a NYCHA development. They'll say funded in part, and we wait till those buckets get filled, then you could buy everything and do all the repairs and replacements. So
Correct.
send me an email.
Do you know what the balance is, by the way, offhand?
I do not, and I think that is a subsequent conversation to have with the next
Offline.
meeting. Well, no, with the next meeting, because right now I'm sure as things are shifting with estimators and a bunch of other projects, like we're dealing with La Marqueta, what was cost 25 million, 5-6 years ago, we're estimating that in 4 or 5 years would be 100 based on the increased costs, and it's beyond CPI, it's everything, labor, what have you.
Sure.
So send me an email, and I'll gladly give you a phone call. Make sure you put your number in there. Okay.
Okay, absolutely.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Angel, and I appreciate everyone's patience. Thank you very much. We all have our homework. Board members, if you have a question, please reach out to me. Don't forget to mute yourself. John, if you could mute yourself, please. Thank you. With that, is there any old business? Any new business? Okay, and with that, Angel, please call the roll to conclude the meeting.
Certainly, task force members, when I call your name, please answer present. Jose Altamirano. Jessica Elliott. David Giordano.
Present.
Giselle Malave.
Present.
Jennifer Meyer.
Present.
Nosa Arama. Beverly Pabon. Claudia Perez. Thank you. Claudia Perez.
No, present.
Thank you, Nosa.
Jessica Elliott's
Claudia
also
present.
present. So sorry, I lost.
Okay. All right. So I got Claudia, next is Xavier
Present.
and Candy.
Present.
Thank you.
Did you
Yeah,
get me, Angel?
no, I took you off the list because you didn't answer. when I
Okay,
called.
sorry. I lost connection. I'm so sorry. I'm here.
That's all right. We got you. We got you. Just kidding.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
If you have any questions about this, please just reach out and give a call. Okay. And we'll look
Thank you.
forward to the next meeting, which is to be determined at this point, but we will make an announcement on our website. Please go to cb11m.org and you can click on our calendar. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
You have a great night.